Alan might finally get that janitor job at Home Depot if he cleans up his act. That's what my dad said into the damn microphone. I was standing near the bar at Jackson's Grill, halfway through a flat bourbon, and that sentence hit like a punch to the gut. A few people chuckled, awkward and tight. My sister Erica snorted loud enough for the front tables to turn their heads. The party was supposed to be about Dad, 40 years building Hargrove Industrial into something real, a proper retirement send-off. But the second Erica walked in with her blowout hair and tailored suit, it was like he forgot anyone else existed. Quick note: before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? My name's Alan Hargrove. I'm 54, born and raised in Peoria, Illinois, and apparently the family embarrassment. Always have been, at least in Dad's eyes. Jackson's was packed that night. Old employees, a few union guys, even our longest-standing supplier flew in from Pittsburgh. Dad was working the room like a politician, clapping backs, telling old stories like he hadn't already told them 100 times. But when he got up to the mic, everything changed. He went down a damn list, thanking department heads, plant managers, even the maintenance guy who retired last year. Then, with a big showman grin, he turned to Erica. "And let's give a round of applause," he said, "to the next generation of leadership, my brilliant daughter, Erica." The place erupted. People actually stood. She gave a little fake humble wave, like she wasn't soaking it up. I stayed by the bar, just nodded, drank. Nobody clapped for me. Nobody even looked my way. And who knows, Dad added, chuckling, maybe Alan can finally snag that janitor job at Home Depot if he cleans up his act. That's when it happened. Rick, Dad's longtime attorney, stood up by the baby grand piano, holding this beat-up manila folder like it weighed 100 pounds. He didn't smile, didn't move, just locked eyes with Dad and waited. I hadn't heard my name said with any kind of pride since high school. Senior year, I was MVP when we won state. Dad shook my hand like I was someone worth being proud of. That was 36 years ago. Since then, I've been the backup son, the guy who didn't fit the mold, the one who should have been grateful for scraps. Rick took a step forward. That folder changed everything. And maybe it sounds crazy, but in that split second, I started thinking back to where all this crap really began. Peoria, Illinois. Same town my granddad helped settle into industry back in the day. You could taste steel in the air, that kind of place. Lunch pails, union jackets, guys who ran machines for 30 years without blinking. Dad built Hargrove Industrial from the ground up with Grandpa. I mean, literally, I've seen pictures of the dirt lot where they poured the first foundation. I used to hear about it every night growing up. Payroll stress, supplier delays, which forklift guy needed firing. Dinner time was less about how your day was, and more about which department screwed the pooch. And me? I loved it. I was the annoying kid who tagged along after school, asked too many questions, stayed late watching the line move. I'd come home smelling like rubber belts and cold steel. Thought that meant something? Erica barely showed up. Maybe twice a month, tops. But whenever she did, she walked in like she was already running the place. Dad ate it up. "She's got that polish," he'd say. "Real head for systems." She was the future. I was part of operations. At 17, I rebuilt an entire assembly motor from scrap and designed a conveyor reroute that shaved 12 seconds per cycle. 12 seconds. Multiply that across 3 shifts, 5 days a week. That was real money. Dad took one look and said, "Neat trick, Al. Let's let the engineers figure out the real solutions." I remember just standing there, covered in grease, holding the plans I'd spent 2 weeks on. He didn't even glance twice. After high school, I busted my ass, got my BS in industrial engineering from Bradley. Paid my own way mostly. Side jobs, scholarships, one miserable semester of roofing in the snow. Erica, she interned one summer and waltzed into Kellogg for her MBA. Full ride, Dad's connections. When she came back, she got a private office and a title that meant nothing but sounded impressive. Strategic Operations Consultant. I started on the floor, literally. Boots, hard hat, punch card. First thing I did, overhauled the shift rotation, reduced overtime costs, brought in 3 new clients by month 6, also cut downtime by 18%, and automated half the loading bay with off-the-shelf systems I modified myself. Never got mentioned in a single meeting. Meanwhile, Erica led a logistics revamp that went sideways. Lost us 2 vendors and cost us 6 figures easy. Dad still brought it up like she'd won a damn Nobel Prize. She took initiative, he told the board. That's leadership. I almost laughed in his face. Mom used to try and smooth it over. Your father's just old-fashioned, she'd whisper after dinner when I'd vent. He doesn't mean it the way it sounds. Number. He meant it exactly how it sounded. To him, I was labor, boots on concrete. Useful, sure, but not worthy of trust. Not like Erica. She wore heels and used words like synergy and scalability. That's what mattered to him. I kept my head down. I figured hard work would eventually cut through. Let the results speak. Hell, I had guys twice my age asking to transfer to my section. Said we got more done in 8 hours than the other side did in 10. But I was invisible. Every promotion, every family dinner, every company milestone, Erica at the center, me somewhere near the edge of the frame, usually holding a wrench or some report no one wanted to read. You swallow that kind of stuff long enough, it gets heavy. Starts to twist how you see yourself. But I kept going. I figured maybe one day he'd see me. Turns out he was watching. Just not the way I thought. Because back at Jackson's Grill, Rick finally cleared his throat. And everything I thought I knew about my place in this family started shifting. Rick didn't speak yet. He just stood there, manila folder in hand, eyes fixed on my father, like the floor was about to crack open beneath him. But no one else noticed, not yet. It wasn't real applause. It was that empty trained seal kind of clapping. The kind you do when you're not sure what else to do. The kind that makes you feel like you belong, even when you're just going through the motions. I was tucked way in the back, near the hallway where the restrooms were, right by a broken wall sconce and some fake potted fern. My name wasn't on the program. No speech slot, no thank you. Just an assigned seat with my name misspelled on the place card. Alan. Meanwhile, Erica sat up front, dead center, glowing like a damn lighthouse in her tailored navy suit. Hair perfect. Smile frozen at the exact angle that made people trust her. Dad kept glancing over at her like she was a prize he'd just won. He stood at the mic, swirling his whiskey like it was part of the act. We've had a hell of a ride, he said. 40 years of ups and downs, wins and lessons. Every sentence was followed by a pause, waiting for applause. Tonight, we recognize the people who made this company what it is. He toasted Dave from logistics, Shelley from HR, even Paul, the kid who runs the mailroom, who's been here all of 7 months. Then he cleared his throat, real dramatic. But no moment gives me more pride, he said, than passing the torch to someone who understands where we're headed, someone who's organized, driven, strategic. He motioned to Erica. Your new president and the future majority shareholder of Hargrove Industrial. My daughter. The room stood. People actually stood. Erica didn't even fake being surprised. She was already halfway up before he finished the sentence. Gave her fake humble little nod. Glanced back at me like she'd just won prom queen, and I was the janitor pushing the mop bucket. I didn't move, didn't clap. My glass was empty, and my jaw felt wired shut. Dad wasn't finished. He leaned closer to the mic and said, Alan's had his run. That alone might have been forgivable, if he'd stopped there, but he didn't. He kept going. But the future belongs to new vision, someone with focus, not just hands. I stared at him. My face didn't move, but my heart started pounding. Then came the kill shot. The laughter was worse than the silence. Not a roar, just those polite chuckles people give when they don't know whether it's a joke or a jab. But they laughed anyway. My jaw locked so tight I felt it click in my ear. Erica smirked. A couple of the old board members shifted in their seats like they didn't want to be caught looking at me. And that's when Rick walked forward. He didn't ask. Didn't clear his throat. Just stepped straight toward the mic, folder in one hand, face hard as stone. Gerald, he said, I need to address something before this goes any further. The room froze. Dad blinked like someone had just slapped him. Rick, maybe we can... No, Rick said. This can't wait. Erica leaned toward him. Rick, this isn't really the time. He didn't look at her. He opened the folder. I didn't know what was in it, but something in my gut shifted, like a door creaking open after decades. And for the first time in that entire miserable night, I wasn't the one shrinking in the corner. Rick opened the folder like he'd rehearsed it 100 times. I need to address a legal oversight before this goes any further, he said into the mic, calm and clear. Dad let out this nervous little laugh. Rick, let's not... Rick didn't flinch. This is important, Gerald. You can't hand over control of Hargrove Industrial tonight. You could hear the fork stop clinking. People froze in mid-bite. One guy near the front literally turned his chair to face Rick. All eyes were off Dad now. Off Erica. Locked on Rick. Dad's smile twitched. You're confused, my friend. This is a retirement party, not a shareholder meeting. I know exactly what it is, Rick said. And I also know what the founding charter says. That got Dad's full attention. His lips parted like he was about to argue, but Rick cut him off. In 1981, when Hargrove Industrial was incorporated, Charles Hargrove included a clause in the charter that requires leadership succession be based on measurable contribution, not inheritance, not bloodline. Contribution. Erica sat up straighter. Her eyes darted between Rick and Dad. And, Rick continued, you reaffirmed that clause in writing when you became CEO in 2002. I have the signed amendment right here. He held up the document, slid it out of the folder with a slow hand, like peeling back the lid on a secret no one wanted out. I've also been tracking performance metrics, he said, for both Alan and Erica. For the past 5 years, I felt my stomach clench. I didn't even know Rick knew what I was working on, let alone kept records. Alan's been running operations from the floor, he went on. He led the automation upgrade in Zone 3, slashed downtime by 18% across 4 departments, landed 3 major distribution contracts, and improved warehouse efficiency by almost 20%. My ears rang. People started whispering. Not about Erica, about me. Rick flipped to the next sheet. Erica's contributions, on the other hand, include a failed logistics restructure that cost the company over $900,000 in lost contracts, delays, and vendor churn. We also found duplicated expense reports and consulting invoices that appear to have been paid twice, in some cases to firms with no physical address. Erica jumped up. You can't be serious. That's a fabrication. I initiated an audit 6 months ago, Rick said, not even looking at her. It was triggered by anomalies in quarterly filings. I was authorized by Charles's original board representative, Frank Delaney, who's still listed as emeritus advisor. Frank, sitting halfway back, nodded slowly, calm, like he'd known this day would come. Erica's voice shot up a few octaves. This is Alan's doing. He's manipulating the system because he can't stand that I earned this. I finally stood. Earned it? I said. I was on the floor every day while you were out giving TED Talks about optimization strategy that bled us dry. You were too busy playing executive to notice the place was coming apart. Dad barked. That's enough. No, Rick said firmly. This is overdue. He stepped aside and passed the mic to Frank, who cleared his throat and said, I've reviewed the audit. It's legit. It paints a clear picture of performance versus perception. You could feel the room start to shift. People who had clapped for Erica 5 minutes ago were suddenly avoiding eye contact. Erica crossed her arms. You all want to throw me under the bus because I pushed this company into modern systems. You pushed it into chaos, Rick said, and you cost us loyalty, vendor trust, actual revenue. Dad looked pale, like the air had been sucked out of him. I didn't know, he mumbled. I didn't know about any of this. I stared at him. Yeah, you did. You just didn't want to. Erica looked like she might bolt, her chair half pushed back, one heel already angled toward the side exit. Rick looked around the room and said, Before we crown a successor, this board has a duty to evaluate facts, not just speeches and suits. Then he turned to me, not with a smile, just a nod. And for once I didn't feel like the backup plan. The moment Rick stepped back from the mic, the whole room cracked open. People started murmuring, first in low voices, then louder. You could hear chairs scrape against hardwood. Silverware clinked against empty plates. Some folks were flipping through the audit pages like they couldn't believe what they were reading. Erica's hands were shaking, but she tried to hold her ground. This is all Alan's doing, she snapped. He's trying to steal what's mine. He's jealous. Rick didn't say a word. He didn't have to. That folder spoke for him. Then Martha from accounting stood up from table 8, napkin still in her lap. Actually, she said, loud and clear, Erica's department cost us 15% in operating margin the last 2 quarters. Alan's changes are the only reason we didn't bleed out. Heads turned. A few of the engineers nodded. Erica looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. "You've always had it out for me, Martha." Martha just shrugged. "I like numbers. They don't lie." Dad raised his hands like a traffic cop. "Let's all take a breath. This has clearly gotten off track." "No," I said, standing up. My voice cut through everything. "You want to talk legacy? Let's talk legacy. Legacy isn't who gets the best title or who smiles at the ribbon cuttings. Legacy is keeping your head down and doing the damn work." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was loaded. Nobody clapped. Nobody needed to. Dad tried again, softer this time. "Alan, this isn't how it's supposed to go. We had a plan." "No," I said. "You had a plan. You just never asked who earned what. You picked the person who looked right on paper." Frank, Grandpa's old friend and the last remaining board founder, stood up slowly from the front table. "Enough talk," he said. "We've got hard data, legal obligations, and one hell of a mess to sort through." He turned to Dad. "I'm calling an emergency board session for tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., sharp." Dad opened his mouth, closed it again. He looked smaller, like someone had finally shown him his reflection, and he didn't recognize the face staring back. "Agreed," Rick said. "We'll present everything formally. Let the board decide based on facts." Erica let out a bitter laugh. "This is a circus. You people are just falling for the sob story. Alan's a glorified shift supervisor, and you're acting like he's Steve Jobs in a Carhartt jacket." I looked right at her. "Keep digging, Erica. You might hit the bottom soon." Frank nodded to the rest of the board members. Most of them already had their copies of the audit open. Nobody looked in Erica's direction. People started getting up. Not rushing, just done. Conversations picked up in pockets. I heard my name in a few, not whispered, just said plainly, like I finally existed. Erica stormed off toward the side door, heels clicking hard across the wood. Dad didn't move. He stayed at the head table, still clutching his whiskey glass, like it might tell him what to do next. I left mine on the table and walked out without looking back. Tomorrow was going to be a war, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't walking in as the underdog. I showed up 15 minutes early in my best damn suit, not a flashy one. Navy, no pinstripes, sleeves tailored tight, clean shave, fresh haircut, black binder in hand. Walked into that boardroom like I'd been doing it for years, not just dreaming about getting invited in. Frank gave me a nod from the end of the table. Rick was already there, setting up his files. Martha sat 2 seats over, flipping through the audit like it was morning coffee. The others filtered in, Michelle from procurement, Javier from supply chain, even Curtis from legal. Every one of them had a copy of that folder. At exactly 7:05, the door opened and in walked Erica. Late. And not alone. 2 lawyers followed behind her, both suited up, briefcases in hand, faces stiff. She didn't look at me, just made a show of pulling out her chair and adjusting her blazer like she was settling into her rightful place. Rick stood first. "I'll begin," he said, cool and direct. "Before any personal arguments are made, we need to address the company's charter and what it demands." He held up the original succession clause from Grandpa's founding documents, then laid down the updated version signed by my father in 2002. "As counsel, I confirm both are legally binding. Leadership must be based on measurable contribution, not relation, not appointment, not optics." Erica's lawyer leaned forward. "Intent matters. Gerald Hargrove made it clear." Rick cut him off. "Intent does not override contract." He moved straight into the audit findings. Timeline, revenue losses, system breakdowns, vendor fallout. Rick laid it all out, no drama, just facts. When he finished, Martha stood. "I've verified every figure," she said. "The duplicated invoices, the unbalanced purchase orders, even the department-level cover-ups. It all tracks back to decisions made under Erica's direction." Erica's cheeks flushed. Frank held up a hand. "We're not here for excuses. We're here for accountability." Dad finally spoke up. "Look, maybe Erica made mistakes, but every young leader needs time to grow. I stand by her intentions." That's when I stood. 15 minutes. That's all I took. No speeches, no dramatics, just data. I walked them through what my team had done the last 2 years. Restructured shift planning, reduced turnover among veteran floor workers, consolidated 6 vendors into 2 reliable ones, and saved the company almost $800,000 without sacrificing output. Every point backed by a chart, every statement backed by proof. No fluff, just work. Erica tried to poke holes. Alan doesn't understand long-term scale. He's a technician. We needed vision, not a mechanic pushing buttons. I didn't even look at her. Michelle leaned forward. We needed someone who kept the company alive while the rest of us were in meetings. That shut Erica up. Rick passed out final voting slips. 9 total. No one said a word for a full minute. Then Frank collected the papers, counted twice, and read the numbers aloud. 6-3 in favor of Alan Hargrove for interim leadership, pending oversight and continued performance. Erica stiffened in her chair. "This isn't over," she muttered to her attorney. Frank didn't even look up. "It is for now." Dad stayed seated, didn't speak, didn't stand. He just stared down at the wood grain in the table, like it might explain how this happened. I gathered my papers, nodded to the board, and walked out without waiting for permission. I didn't need his approval anymore. I didn't sit in Dad's old office that first week. I walked it, every floor, every department, clipboard in hand, boots on concrete, just like before. First thing I did was tear up the org chart. People who'd been buried under middle managers for years got pulled up. Marcus in maintenance, promoted to lead tech. Gina from packaging, given oversight on inventory flow, something she'd been managing unofficially for months anyway. Deadweight got reassigned or let go. No politics, just performance. Then we cut the fat. I sat down with Michelle in procurement and ran through every vendor contract. We chopped 6 out of the rotation and renegotiated terms with the ones we kept. Cleaned up supply chain leaks and put stopgaps in place for backup sourcing. By week 3, our numbers started ticking up. But it wasn't just spreadsheets. Morale shifted. Guys on the floor, the ones I came up with, the ones who'd been ignored, finally felt seen. I made time for walkthroughs every morning, not waving from a window, there, in the noise and sweat. I remembered birthdays, took questions seriously, bought coffee for third shift on Fridays. You could feel it. The place moved different. And then Dad started showing up again, not every day. Not stomping around barking orders like he used to, just drifting in around 10, standing by the break room, watching quietly. Less, "What the hell is going on?" and more, "How are you handling this?" One Thursday, a supplier collapsed overnight. One of the few we hadn't replaced yet. Orders got stalled. Our line was about 2 days from freezing. I stayed late working through alternate options. No panic, just problem solving. Next morning, Dad showed up with a contact from his old network, a retired guy who still had pull with one of the distribution hubs outside Kansas City. He didn't say much, just handed me the number and said, "He owes me." I called. We patched it together in 2 hours. That night, we stayed late together. Him on one end of the war room table, me on the other. Not arguing, not competing, just working. It wasn't perfect. He still sighed too loud when something went wrong. Still had that tone like the sky might fall at any minute. But when I handed off the revised supply chain plan and walked to grab another coffee, I caught him out of the corner of my eye. He nodded, didn't say a damn word, just that one nod when he thought I wasn't looking. It was the closest thing to good job I'd ever gotten, and it was enough. 2 days after the supplier crisis, I walked into the break room to grab a Coke, and there she was, Erica, propped up against the vending machine like she owned the damn building. "You always wanted to humiliate me," she said, arms crossed, voice low but loaded. I didn't flinch, just cracked the can open. "Number. I wanted Dad to see I mattered. You just made that easier by screwing up." Her jaw clenched. "Read it again," I said. "Every number's real. Every signature is yours." She took a step closer. "You think this is over? I'm weighing legal options." I stared at her, calm, tired of playing defense. "Good, because if you think the board's going to welcome you back after what they've seen, you're not reading the room." Her eyes flicked away. For once, she didn't have a comeback. She stormed out a second later, heels clicking hard across the tile, just like at the steakhouse. Later that week, I got a text from Dad. "Meet me in the old office, 6 p.m. I showed up early, sat in the same chair I used to wait in, while he gave pep talks to middle managers. He came in 5 minutes late, same sweater vest, same weathered frown. But this time, he didn't sit at the desk, he sat across from me. I never saw you this way, Alan, he said after a long pause. I figured you were just labor. I didn't blink. That's the problem. You thought business was only boardrooms, not boots on concrete. He looked at the floor, hands folded. I was wrong. No defense, no deflection, just that. We sat in silence. No clock ticking, no phone buzzing, just the hum of old HVAC and the weight of everything we hadn't said for 3 decades. He finally looked at me and said, "You're not your grandfather. You're something different." I braced myself. "But you're the only one I trust to keep the name intact." I swallowed hard, not from emotion, from exhaustion, from hearing something I should have heard 20 years ago. Still, I nodded. "Then let me do it my way." He stood slowly, like his bones weren't sure how to hold that kind of honesty. "I'll stay out of your way," he said. I stood too. "That's not what I want." He raised an eyebrow. "I want your help," I said. "When I ask for it, not when you feel like swooping in." He gave a dry chuckle. "That's fair." He looked around the room one last time before we walked out. Same walls, same family photos, same oil painting of Grandpa shaking hands with a state senator. But something about it felt smaller now, like the room didn't hold as much power as it used to. We didn't hug, we didn't shake hands. But I followed him out the door, this time not behind him, right beside him. 6 months later, we were back in the black. Not just breaking even, real profit, real growth. We'd landed 2 new national distributors, one in Atlanta and the other in Phoenix. Both had toured the facility, both walked away saying the same thing. This place actually runs. I didn't hang up banners, didn't throw confetti. Instead, I rebranded the entire packaging line. Labels, boxes, shipping pallets, the whole deal. New logo, new slogan. Sharp, clean, blue on silver design that looked like it belonged in the 21st century. Same update Erica once called a waste of budget. It became one of our best marketing tools. Customers noticed. So did the employees. And that was what really mattered. Meetings used to be stiff, quiet, people looking at their notes, nodding along, just waiting for the clock. Now, we had ideas on the table before I even sat down. Floor managers pitching redesigns, welders suggesting better flow paths. A guy from sanitation even drew up a new grease trap system that saved us thousands in cleanup delays. No fear, just solutions. Erica, she was gone. Resigned after the board rejected her appeal. No fireworks, no press release. Just an empty office with her nameplate removed by Monday morning. Dad showed up to our quarterly review 2 weeks later, sat quietly in the back. No comments, no questions, just listened. When the meeting ended, I was halfway through packing up when I felt a hand on my shoulder. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there like he was waiting for the right words to finally come. "I don't say it much," he muttered. "But you earned this." I smirked. "Took long enough." He snorted, almost laughed. "You're not wrong." He looked around the room, slow. "You'll do better than I did." That part, that one hit.